وأما من جاءك يسعى وهو يخشى فأنت عنه تلهى كلا إنها تذكرة فمن شاء ذكره في صحف مكرمة مرفوعة مطهرة بأيدي سفرة كرام بررة قتل الإنسان ما أكفره من أي شيء خلقه من نطفة خلقه فقدره ثم السبيل يسره ثم أماته فأقبره ثم إذا شاء أنشره كلا لما يقض ما أمره فلينظر الإنسان إلى طعامه أنا صببنا الماء صبا ثم شققنا الأرض شقا فأنبتنا فيها حبا وعنبا وقضبا وزيتونا ونخلا وحدائق غلبا وفاكهة وأبا متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فإذا جاءت الصاخة يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه وجوه يومئذ مسفرة ضاحكة مستبشرة ووجوه يومئذ عليها غبرة ترهقها قترة أولئك هم الكفرة الفجرة صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل فرجه.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم، يا رسول الله، يا إمام الرحمة، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا أمير المؤمنين، يا علي بن أبي طالب، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا فاطمة الزهراء، يا بنت محمد، يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيحة عند الله، اشفعي لنا عند الله.
يا أبا محمد، يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله،
اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسين بن علي، أيها الشهيد، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن الحسين، يا زين العابدين، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر، يا محمد بن علي، أيها الباقر، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا جعفر بن محمد، أيها الصادق، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا موسى بن جعفر، أيها الكاظم، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
حاجات يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. هيا على الصلاة. هيا على الصلاة. هيا على الفلاح. هيا على الفلاح. هيا على خير العمل. هيا على خير العمل. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد. أحسنت، ما شاء الله ما شاء الله، أحسنت يا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا أمير المؤمنين بالحق حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة. قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله حقا حقا. أن نصلي الصلاة العشاء قربة إلى الله تعالى. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله تعالى قوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بمحمد وآله الأطهار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله تعالى قوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله ولا إله إلا الله أكبر. سبحان الله ولا إله إلا الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا ولي العافية أسألك العافية عافية الدين والدنيا والآخرة بمحمد وعترته الطاهرة. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. شكرا لله شكرا لله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيحة الزهراء يرحمكم الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات
شكر لله شكر لله شكر لله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أفضل الذكر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آل بيتك. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا أمير المؤمنين بالحق حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. يا محسن قد أتاك المسيء. أنت المحسن وأنا المسيء فتجاوز عن قبيح ما تعلم مني يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. أنوي أن أصلي صلاة العشاء قربة إلى الله تعالى. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله تعالى قوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله تعالى قوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله تعالى قوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله ربي أتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا خفي الألطاف نجنا مما نحضر ونخاف بمحمد وآله الأشراف. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الذليل الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله وخير الأسماء لله. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
بمحمد وآل محمد صلوات. آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں، یہ بہن قید ہوئی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے، تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکی زچ دے، یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا، مجھ پہ ہے تشہ لبی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا گر، ہے برہنا میرا سر کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر، اے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو بخدا، تجھ سے دارس تھی بری تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. آ گئی شام علم لٹ گیا اہل حرم، ریت پر جلتی ہوئی ہو گیا ٹھنڈا عالم، پرسہ دینے کے لیے مجھ سے ملنے کے لیے آ گئے بابا علی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. کیا کہوں شعر میرے بیریدہ ہم کو لیے، یہ مسلمان سارے شہر در شہر گئے، کھلکتے کوفہ کبھی کھلکتے شام کبھی، اور رہا ہم پہ ہنسی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. کیا کہوں شعر میرے بیریدہ ہم کو لیے، یہ مسلمان سارے شہر در شہر گئے، کھلکتے کوفہ کبھی کھلکتے شام کبھی، اور ہم پہ ہنسی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی، قید خانے میں قضا جب سکینہ کو ملی، دیکھے کرتے کا کفن بچی دفنائی گئی، اس گری نام تیرا صورت ناد علی، دکھ میں دوراتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب رضا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ محمد و محمد صلوات۔ سورۃ مبارک الفاتحہ۔
مت صلوات۔ آگے آتے ہی ایک اور درود پڑے گا محمد اور آل محمد پر۔ آج انشاءاللہ آخری دن ہے جہاں میں فضائل کے ساتھ شروع کروں گا، اور پھر کل سے انشاءاللہ دعا کے یا مناجات کے ساتھ بھی شروع کریں گے، اور پھر انشاءاللہ مصائب کی طرف۔ تو یہ آخری جو فضائل مجھے پیش کرنا ہے آپ کے سامنے، وہ ہماری بیوی زینب سلام اللہ علیہا کی شان میں ہے، اور ان کی عظمت پہ دھیان دیجیے گا انشاءاللہ، اور ذہن میں رکھیے گا کہ کربلا کے بعد کیوں اتنا رتبہ بڑھا بیوی زینب کا۔ آپ سب کی اجازت ہے تو ایک درود پڑے گا محمد اور آل محمد پر۔ کہ میرے ہونٹوں پہ یہ تیری جو ثنا ہے زینب، میرے ہونٹوں پہ تیری جو ثنا ہے زینب، میں نہیں میرا لہو بول رہا ہے زینب، نعرہ حیدری، میں نہیں میرا لہو بول رہا ہے زینب، اور سورماؤں کی بھی رک جائے جہاں پر سانسیں، سورماؤں کی بھی رک جائے جہاں پر سانسیں، مرحبا تم نے وہاں خطبہ دیا ہے زینب، مرحبا تم نے۔ مکال بھائی ابھی تشریف لائے، پھر سے ان کے لیے پڑھ رہا ہوں کہ سورماؤں کی بھی رک جائے جہاں پر سانسیں، مرحبا تم نے وہاں خطبہ دیا ہے زینب علی مولا حیدری علی مولا علی مولا یا علی جی جی اور اس سے ثابت ہے زمانے پہ شجاعت تیری اس سے ثابت ہے اس سے ثابت ہے زمانے پہ شجاعت تیری تیری آغوش میں عباس پلا ہے ہائے 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 زینب ہائے ہائے علی مولا یا کہ اس سے ثابت ہے زمانے پہ شجاعت تیری ارے تیری آغوش میں عباس پلا ہے زینب میرے ہونٹوں پہ یہ خاص توجہ ہے شعر پر کہ بس یہ کافی ہے سمجھنے کو تمہارا رتبہ بس یہ کافی ہے سمجھنے کو تمہارا رتبہ مشورہ تم سے امامت نے لیا ہے زینب علی مولا علی مولا مشورہ تم سے امامت نے لیا ہے زینب اور آخری شعر کہ 14 معصوموں کے اور ذات الہی کے سوا 14 معصوموں کے اور ذات الہی کے سوا آج تک کوئی نہیں سمجھا کہ کیا ہے زینب آج تک کوئی نہیں سمجھا کہ کیا ہے زینب میرے ہونٹوں پہ یہ درود پڑھے گا محمد و آل محمد پر یہاں سنبھل کر قدم اٹھانا یہ کربلا ہے یہ کربلا ہے یہاں سنبھل کر قدم اٹھانا مل کے پڑھیے یہ کربلا ہے یہ کربلا ہے یہ کربلا ہے یہ بات ہرگز نہ بھول جانا یہ کربلا ہے یہ ماشاءاللہ بلند آواز سے یہ کربلا ہے یہ کربلا جہاں میں صبر و رضا یہی ہے خدائے صبر و رضا یہی ہے یہاں پہ آتے ہے چل کے مہدی، بہشت زہرا یہ سرزمین ہے، یہاں ہے زہرا کا آنا جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا، اور دعائیں دیں گے حسین تم کو، یہاں پہ آنسو اگر بہائے، جہاں پہ بیٹی نے بے وطن کی ہر ستم گروں سے تماچے کھائے، یہاں پہ خوشیوں کو بھول جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ اور یہاں پہ حر بھی تھا، حرملا بھی، کتاب ہستی تو پڑھ کے دیکھو، صدائے حل میں جو آ رہی ہے، تم اس طرف ہو یا اس طرف ہو، تمہیں عمل سے ہے اب بتانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ ماشاءاللہ بلند آواز سے یہ اور یہیں پہ قاسم ہوئے ہیں ٹکڑے، یہیں پہ زیں سے گرے تھے مولا، یہیں سکینہ سمو سے لپٹی، یہیں پہ اصغر نے تیر کھایا، یہیں غریبی کا ہے ٹھکانہ، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ اور کسی کے دل میں لگی ہے برچھی، کسی کے بازو کٹے یہیں پر، ہے علی کی بیٹی کے کتنے یوسف لہو میں ڈوبے ہے اس زمین پر، لٹا ہے سادات کا گھرانہ، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ بات ہرگز نہ بھول جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، ماشاءاللہ آخری بار بلند آواز سے یہ کربلا ہے، پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات، الفاتحہ۔
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Alsheraa, Zakir Shinaz Ali Dina, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin. Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Dua Shfa Maris is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah. A humble reminder to please donate towards the Muharram and Safar Fund. A donation of $300 per family is requested. If we could once again request the brothers to please move as far forward as possible with a salawat. Let us now invite Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Alsheraa to please come forward for tonight's Majalis. Bar Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا الإمام الحسين عليه السلام وجعلنا الله وإياكم من الطالبين بثأره بين يدي الإمام المنصور المؤيد المهدي من آل محمد. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. We have now entered the 5th night of the holy month of Muharram. Halfway there, are you ready? All together, Assalamu ala al-Hussein وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي كفيل الهواشم قمر بني هاشم أبا الفضل العباس. السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Illuminate your hearts and minds with a second loud salawat. And for the love of Habib ibn Mudahir, a third with your loudest of voices. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the most impressive things to witness is a debate that ends in your favor. Whether you are involved in that debate or you are simply witnessing it, there is something satisfying to watch someone, for lack of better words, get destroyed through a set of arguments, through points where a person has no chance to respond or rebuttal or rebuke. Oftentimes, however, we notice that there is a serious problem with modern Muslim debates. And today, many can look online or go outside, whether it's in places like Hyde Park in London or downtown Manhattan, or sometimes at your local universities, you'll have missionary groups that will approach and ask you if you believe in their way of life. If not, they're willing to debate you on it. And one of the most satisfying moments is when you see the debate end in your favor. Whether it's a Muslim who debates, let's say, a Christian, or a Jew, or an atheist, or a Muslim who debates another Muslim on an issue they disagree upon, whether it's intra-faith, Shia versus Sunni, interfaith, so on and so forth. However, 9 times out of 10, the way these debates are conducted are really bad. In fact, they couldn't be further from the nature and essence and vision of the message of Islam. They might have yelling and screaming and arguing, and you'll see it sometimes. Their veins will come out. They'll start yelling. And what are they yelling about? Areas concerning the Quran, the Ahadith, whether Amir al-Mu'mineen was elected, whether he wasn't, that Sahabi, why do you do la'an, why do you this, your position on Yazid, it's all on YouTube. And the numbers have accumulated in the tens of millions, brothers and sisters. One lecture could have, or one debate rather, over 5 million views, a Muslim debating an atheist. Just look online, Muslim debates, or Islamic debates, free speech and Islam, women's rights and Islam, and you'll see people yelling and screaming. And lately we've noticed a surge of attacks where you could find the opposition disagree with you. Like say a Christian missionary, recently there was a woman in Hyde Park, she was stabbed by self-proclaimed Muslims on her face specifically with that knife, and she came forth and she used this to her advantage. So well, what else do I expect? I'm trying to preach Islam is violent, and there you go, thank you, you actually helped me in my message. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes that there is an element of civil discourse. At the end of the day, Allah made mention, Id'u ila sabili rabbika. Id'u da'wa, da'aya. Look at the etymology of the word. Sometimes we describe an advertising banner that shows a product, we call it a da'aya. You want to maximize the amount of viewers who can see this. So Allah uses this language. Id'u ila sabili rabbika. Be a form of advertisement to the way of your Lord. Rabbika bil what? Bil asyan, bil asabiyya, bil siyah, through yelling, through anger, through veins come popping up and yelling and whatever, this and that. La, bil hikmati. وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. Most beautiful combination of words. Hikmah and maw'idah. Hikmah, wisdom, wise. You could be smart. Because if you look at these debates, the guy's very smart, mashallah. Memorize this, page this, chapter that, ayah this, that, this book, that book. Knows your books more than you know your own books. MashaAllah, this alim, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, this and that Khalifa that year. Smart, but not wise. Bil-hikmati. You can have all this information, but that doesn't make you a scholar. That just makes you a parrot. You heard and you repeated. A wise person invokes the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt when Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, advises any person who believes they have some share of knowledge. When you go to disseminate that knowledge, كَلِّمَ النَّاسِ عَلَىٰ قَدَرِ عُقُولِهِمْ. He says it so well and so well put. Salamullahi ala Amir al-Mu'mineen. What hasn't he said that is so well put? Speak to people in the level of their intellect. When you come and speak to someone, don't bombard them by flexing, by showing, look how much I'm able to memorize dates and names and that. I believe you me, no one really cares. Unless you're talking about an academic researcher, someone that appreciates these things. But to that teenager that's struggling in their iman, throwing these names, Suhail bil Amr, the arbitration of Saffin and Nahrawan and the pact and Sulh, they don't know any of this. What you should do is approach them in the way they're able to comprehend and handle. One Arabi, an Arabi is different from an Arabi. They would categorize the Arabi as the one who was more civilized in that time period. The Arabi is the Bedouin who still lived in the deserts and grazed, wasn't really developed. The Arabi came and asked Rasulullah. So like modern Bedouins, or in Iraq we call them Mi'dan even, although that's seen as a derogatory term. It means you're not progressive enough. So this Arabi came and said, Ya Rasulullah, I want to learn more about Islam. Well, I heard there's a new religion in town. Sounds kind of nice. Piqued my interest. Tell me, I have a few questions to ask you. Notice the questions this man asks and listen to the reply of Rasulullah. Simple question, simple reply. Not overwhelming, well, that's too comprehensive, couldn't understand that. Because people like to learn a few things and show off the fact that they learned these things. What's the point of learning if no one's going to benefit? The hadith is beautiful. It says that zakatul ilm, so there's a zakat for everything. Zakatul ilmi, the zakat, a charity of knowledge, nashro. You are obligated to pay zakat. If you have knowledge and you accumulate a certain amount of it, you are obligated to share it. Zakatul ilmi, the zakat of knowledge, is to disseminate it. And so Rasulullah was approached by this man. He's like, okay, but I have a few questions. What do you say about the man? And you're thinking he's probably going to ask some very deep Aristotelian questions about ontology and sociology. No. He says, Ya Rasulullah, what happens to a man who steals a camel? He's like, stealing a camel is bad. He's like, what about the man who steals a goat? He's like, well, if you steal a goat, that's also bad. He said, that's it, I become a Muslim suddenly. This man, all he knows is this, goats and camels. This is his entire life. Rasulullah didn't hit him with the whole metaphysical, in alamul malakut, your soul will diminish like this, and when you're raised in Yawm al-Qiyamah, it'll be a reflection of your essence, ar-ruha. No. Some people like to give that response because they're trying to show off. Look what I studied, look what I learned. Amir al-Mu'mineen and Ahlul Bayt altogether made it very clear. Speak to people on the degree of their intellect. This man can only handle this much. Camels and sheep, this is all his life. Then come and look at the Christians of Banu Najran in the event of Mubahala. It's a very intellectual discussion. It's one that involves the Bible, the Torah, the New, Old Testament, philosophy, ontology. What is your opinion on pre-eternalism of God? Is he qadim? Or is he ever present and is he existed? Because the event of Mubahala, we look at the latter consequences of it, but we don't look at the beginning discussion of it. The Mubahala ultimately didn't really happen because they had witnessed what they witnessed and they decided to subtract. But when they first approached Rasulullah, they did have questions and Rasulullah replied. That bit, we sometimes don't look at it enough. What had happened? In the last year after, approximately the 9th or 10th year, so a year approximately before Rasulullah left this world, it was called the year of delegations. Am al-Wufud. People started entering Islam in waves. Entering, giving bay'ah and going back. Christians of Najran, the city that borders modern day Saudi and Yemen, right there. There's a huge Christian and Jewish population. In fact, until recently, in the late 20th century, on the borders of the 21st century, there were 50,000 practicing Christians in Yemen, North Yemen, bordering that region. SubhanAllah, it's a huge heritage. Many of them are Sabians, by the way, Sabi'a, and the Quran mentions them. وَالصَّابِئِينَ وَالنَّصَارَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. This demographic is no longer existing anymore, unfortunately due to persecution by ruthless regimes. In any case, this group heard of Islam and they're like, there's a new man in town and he claims to be the last messenger and he's claiming to call the shots and we're living under his order and sovereignty. We have to be careful. Let's go and see him. They entered Medina, they ran into Abu Bakr ibn Abi Quhafa, who would later become the first Khalifa. They ran into Abu Bakr and they asked him, where's this prophet? He's like, I actually don't really know where he is right now. I'm not with him often, I don't know where he is. Go and ask someone else. And then they looked and they asked and they still didn't know where the prophet was. Then they came back to him and they said, where is he? Do you know who we can ask? Because we're going around and we don't see him. He said, well, go ask that young man praying in the masjid. That was Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was the only one that knows where the prophet will be at all times. They approached him and they said, young man, Tell us where this prophet of God is. We want to see what he has to offer. He said, listen, he's not going to receive you like this. You're dressed with so much jewelry. Haven't you seen sometimes there are certain priests and clerics from the religious hierarchy from Christendom. They'll wear gold crosses, jewels, and one has to ponder the asceticism of Jesus. Is that a reflection of that? Or do you look at our ulama and see their simple lifestyle? I remember the whole recent visit of Pope Francis of Sayyid Ali Sistani. The man made a clear mention that I was shocked about the humbleness of his living. Man, he has millions of people emulate him. And the funds are in the millions back and forth used in hospitable, charitable causes. And this is how he lives. The home he doesn't even own is just rented. That is something that reminds me of the teachings of Jesus. Of course, especially when he says that my hands are my servants, my horse and steed are my feet, my pillow is the rock, and my blanket are the stars at nighttime. That's the life of Jesus, and he resembles that lifestyle. These Christians, Imam Amir al-Mu'minin said, he's not going to see you if you're dressed like that. What do you think you are? Go wear something more humble and modest, then he'll talk to you. They left, they dressed a bit more appropriately, then they entered Masjid al-Nabawi. The following is something I would love everyone to observe. I understand that, alhamdulillah, this beautiful community has done many in the field of interfaith dialogue. A few years back before COVID, of course, because now circumstances have changed. But nonetheless, these are beautiful efforts. Look what happened. They entered Masjid al-Nabawi. If you read Tafsir al-Mizan and you get to this ayah of the event of Mubahala, قُلْ تَعَالُوا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ, and even if you read Fakhr al-Din al-Razi's Mafatih al-Ghayb, or any tafsir, so I'm talking Shi'i and non-Shi'i, it mentions that when they entered, do you see sometimes in Sunday Mass, if you ever observe, and I highly recommend learn more about others and their way of life. They sometimes hold like incense in a swinging carrier, and they'll do that with the smoke to like bless the area. They did that inside Masjid al-Nabawi. They came inside and they were doing this, and some of the companions, they put their hands where their weapons were. Rasulullah said, Da'hum, let them. What are they doing? Smoke, who cares? Let them do their business, khalas. It was time for their prayer. Now, I don't know what time of prayer those early Christians have. I have no idea. But they said it was time for their prayer. They faced east. East. I don't know what's east for them to face, but the hadith says they faced east and they started to pray to their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, etc. Then they approached Rasulullah. Now look at, he let them come. They said, look, we have to pray. They allowed them to pray, because if you were to go to a church today and you tell them, look, I want to pray, they'll let you pray. But how many of us would be more willing to allow some of those from non-Muslim worldviews to come and pray in our locations and gatherings? Alhamdulillah, this is the reality here, and many of our wonderful communities, because we are not narrow-minded. We come from a school that was taught and nurtured by the man who, when he was walking by a church, his companions said, I wonder how much shirk is being done inside that church. To which that man said, but I wonder how much Allah is being worshipped in that church. And that man was none other than Amir al-Mu'minin, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Then the discussion began. They said, Ya Muhammad, you claim to be the last messenger of God. We have a few questions to ask you. What's your case on Jesus? He says, he is a servant of Allah, and a messenger of Allah, and a creation of Allah, but not the son of Allah, nor is he Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, Ya Muhammad, why do you say that? Because we have evidence to substantiate that Jesus is the son of God. Rasulullah then began to ask them. Rasulullah, with his knowledge linked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can easily just destroy all their arguments, but he gives them the time to speak. You see, in modern Muslim debates today, they don't give the other person time to speak. Have you ever watched them? They just yell and they don't let you talk. Yell and scream, and it's a fight. It's like a cat fight, not a debate, civil discourse. The Rasul's like, but what do you have to say about Jesus then? Explain to me. How do you substantiate he is the Son of God? They begin to reference a verse of the Bible. The following is a beautiful indication of Rasulullah's knowledge here. They said, because biblically, Jesus claimed, before he was hung up on the cross, he said, I am returning to my Father. Rasulullah said, and does that mean that God is his dad? They said, yes. He said, لِمَا لَا تُكْمِلْ عِبَارَتَهُ. Why do you not continue his sentence? They had given him half the biblical passage. Rasulullah quoted it. They said, what's the continuation of it? He then quoted John chapter 20, passage number 17. Your Prophet quoted this. He said, I am returning to my father. Inni dhahibun ila abi wa abikum. My father and your father. In that case, we are all the children of Jesus. Is it, huh? We're all the children of Jesus? In which context? The children of God, rather. The context of maybe we're all the creation of Allah. Yes, we can call us that. Children of God from the context, we're all His creation, fine. But literal, biological, actual children, hasha lillah to have any children like that. Then Rasulullah said to them, if that is the case, you still argue that because he doesn't have a dad, but he only has a mom, but he referred to God as his dad, إِنَّ مَثَلَ عِيسَى عِنْدَ اللَّهِ كَمَثَلِ آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. The example of Jesus is like the example of Adam alayhi salam. You claim he has no father, therefore makes him the son of God. In that case, Adam is a bigger son of God because he had no father or a mother. So you should be worshipping him double than you are worshipping Jesus. They remained silent in that moment. They said, Ya Abul Qasim, these are things we need to reflect on. What say you? Tomorrow we gather and finally settle this. Like final countdown, we settle this. Me and you meet, we'll send our biggest high priest, and you send yourself, and the one that represents yourself, send your women if you desire, send whoever you want to represent you. And you will do that, we will do that, but we will make a condition. When we have this debate, we have to say whoever loses has the la'na of Allah on them. فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. It's a big deal. Because the loser of this is not someone that just loses a debate and gets sound bites on YouTube. Muslim smokes this guy smokes the Muslim issue. None of that. This one involves the la'na of Allah. Are you confident to put yourself and whoever you want to represent you in the path of the la'na of Allah potentially? Let's do it. Rasulullah said, Insha'Allah. The next day they came out. The Christians of Banu Najran came forth with 60 individuals. Men, women, a lot of people, scholars. They brought their books, they brought their scrolls, they brought everything they can. All their energy was put, and they waited and waited, and they noticed one after the other from the distance in the middle of the desert came out Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, holding Hussein to his chest, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, holding to his right hand Al-Hassan al-Mujtaba, behind him Fatima al-Zahra, behind her Ali ibn Abi Talib. The high priest said, Wallah, don't debate them, for the light on their faces is so strong. If they are to ask Allah to move mountains, they would surely move. They said, why? Because we said the wager is anyone they bring. If it's his companions, debate. Because I'm willing to put my friend on the line in the la'na of Allah, but not my family. They're dear to me. He brought his children, أنفسنا وأنفسكم, himself represented by Ali ibn Abi Talib. نساؤنا. Ayah said what? Nisa, if you know in Arabic, the grammar, Nisa is what? Plural. Why did he just bring one Zahra, Fatima alayhi salam? Because she is Sayyidatun Nisa, all women, equivalent to her, salamullahi alayh. And then he brought the children, أنفسنا قل تعالوا ندعو أبناءنا, the children. These are his grandchildren. No, to Rasulullah, these are his kids. He's holding Hussein here, Al-Hassan here, Fatima behind him, Ali behind her. They said, by Allah, the nur on their face is so strong. If they do dua right now, move mountains, it would surely move. Do not debate them. And they lost. Then and there, a wave of Christians from Bani Najran entered Islam in that moment. We saw suddenly the conduct of this debate, however. They were guided how? How did Rasulullah win this mubahala? Ultimately, it didn't go through. But what was done specifically? The akhlaq of Rasulullah. Many people, the problem, one of the biggest issues with modern Muslim debates, brothers and sisters, is what? Is that their akhlaq is zero. Yelling. And the worst, by the way, is when they hurl insults. How many times have we seen? They claim to be speaking for Shi'ism, but they're insulting. That person is not willing to listen to you anymore if you're just hurling insults their direction. I understand you might have a theological difference or a historical difference, but to that person, the individual you just insulted is their blood and heart and soul and lifeline. There's a time and place to express that walaya and bara'a. In this moment, convince them why you condemn certain individuals. Don't just start shoving it down their throat, because they're not going to listen. Some people, to them, are like Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Sayyidah Zahra, and Rasulullah to you. And you wouldn't handle anyone speaking that way to them, salamullahi alayhi, about them, alayhum assalam. So there's a conduct and etiquette. Their intention isn't even good to begin with. Look at the Ahlul Bayt. Before they spoke, what did they do? They guided by their action. Before you speak for Islam, look like Islam. Imam al-Sadiq says, Ud'u. He says what? Kunu du'atan lana bighayri alsinatikum. Allah, Allah. Be a source of guidance to us without using your tongue. Okay, what's the alternative if I don't use my tongue to do da'wah, guidance? Your akhlaq, your look. Some people, I swear, when you watch these debates, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, they look like cavemen. He's yelling, he's mad, big hair, bushy. Looks like, I have to keep my inner. Looks so mean, looks so rough and ruthless. He's dressed in a mean way, he's yelling, he's screaming. Be a source, invite people to Ahlul Bayt. Don't use your tongue, use your akhlaq. Dress good, dress normally, dress fine. Don't try to intimidate with the guns and screaming and yelling and the veins and etc. Look good for once. Another area is smell good. These things, some people think they're meticulous and minor. No, wallah, they go a long way. There is nothing in this deen you can be excessive in. Rasulullah said, with one exception, utar, fragrance. I know our dear brother, mashallah, he has a company where he sells fragrances. Like, I highly recommend and encourage all those to support, because this is an endeavor and a venture that Rasulullah said, La israfa fil itri. Musrif, and musrifin are considered what in the Quran? Ikhwan al-shaytan. They are the siblings of shaitan. Rasulullah said, La israf fil itr, in fragrances. That's your excuse to go buy a Ventus Creed now. It's a $350. How much? Very expensive, $350. Tom Ford. It's the worst, by the way, because 10 milligrams is exactly $350. Gucci and what else? Yves Saint Laurent. These are very. What else is there, by the way? Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, Bleu de Chanel, Chanel de Bleu, stuff like that. So they're very expensive, but go ahead. Why? Because a Muslim's image is the first thing that leaves the impression before they speak. People generalize. You have something beautiful to say, but if you don't look the part, people will not listen to you. That's why I remember reading in the material of Sheikh Baqir Sharif al-Qarashi, one of our greatest historians on the biographies of the Ahlul Bayt, passed away in Najaf. Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim prayed over his body, recognized all his hard work. He wrote the biographies of the Ahlul Bayt in absolute fine detail. When he gets to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says this. I want you to observe the following. He says, Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, وَكَانَ الطِّيبُ مُحَبِّبًا إِلَيْهِ, and fragrance was so beloved by him, salamullahi alayhi. Aba Abdullah loved fragrances. Do you have any fragrance on you? Do you have it on? Smell good, represent Islam positively. Your Imam loved it. وَكَانَ الطِّيبُ مُحَبِّبًا إِلَيْهِ فَكَانَ الْمِسْكُ لَا يُفَارِقُهُ فِي حِلِّهِ وَتِرْحَالِهِ. And musk, you know that beautiful scent of musk, either from flowers or from other sources. It smells really good, high concentration of beautiful oils. وَكَانَ الْمِسْكُ لَا يُفَارِقُهُ فِي حِلِّهِ أَوْ تِرْحَالِهِ. That musk would never be away from him, whether he was traveling or at home. So if he's traveling, you see people when they travel, they don't care to put stuff on because they're not at their destination. Why would I bother on my way to put fragrance and smell good? No, Aba Abdullah, even if he was traveling, he made sure he had it on his person. He cares about his reputation, salamullahi alayh. A Muslim is one that is in top shape, smells amazing, looks amazing, not a single blemish on them. You're supposed to represent Islam. You particularly, by the way, in America, live in the West, embrace that identity, but make sure you represent it properly. I see so many people negligent, complacent. You know you're a minority. Within a minority. Number one, you're Shi'i. May God help you in this dunya if you're a Shi'i. Number two, you're a Muslim. Number two, you're a Muslim Shi'i living in the United States. How many Muslims live in America, by the way? The research has shown, the consensus, approximately 3.5 million. Okay, how many of them are Shia? Well, 90% of them live in Dearborn, by the way, and the other 10 live here. These are about approximately 25%. In Canada, how many? 1 million. So in all of North America, 4.5 million Muslims. We're not a lot. How many, and that's the population of the US? About 380 million. Zan, okay, 4.5 in North America, 380 million. You're kind of outweighed. You have the shorter end of the stick. If you're going to be a minority within a minority, represent us well. I mean, at the end of the day, when these atrocities in September 11 happened, who was blamed? Those 11 or so psychopaths, or all of Islam, unfortunately? I remember I saw Sikhs were also victimized because they look like the stereotypical Muslim, beard and turban and stuff like that. If people are going to generalize, khalas, but generalize us for good reasons. If they see a Muhammad, let them say, MashaAllah. Well, they won't say, MashaAllah, but let them say, wow, that Muhammad smelled really good. His akhlaq was really nice. Or if they see a Zainab from the sisters, let's say. If they see you wearing hijab, that's why there's more stress on the sisters. But they have a huge responsibility, subhanAllah. Representatives of Islam in a way where they're not even speaking and they're walking representative of the message and mission of Rasulullah. The brothers, it might not be the easiest. I see you and I'm like, Muslim, I can't really tell. As soon as I hear their name, okay, Muslim clearly. That's why it's recommended in the ahadith, embrace your Islam. Don't be ashamed. Wear that ring in the right hand, for example. These are icons that are representative of a standard Muslim, the facial hair, for example, so on and so forth. But when they meet you, let them have the best impression possible. These guys, they have the worst impression possible today when they come and do da'wah and speech. Look at the 5 Ahlul Bayt. When they came out, they said the noor on their face was too much for us. In fact, if you recall in the maqatil, we will read the maqtal, inshallah, on the 10th of Muharram. Be there, brothers and sisters. It'll be earlier in the day. But nonetheless, you notice that there's a line. When Aba Abdullah is out and fighting, salamullahi alayh, he finally lands on the ground, is unable to move, alayhi salam. Suddenly, they're going back and forth, and they just don't have it in them to finish him off. Umar ibn Sa'ad says, what's wrong with you guys? They would say the following, لَقَدْ شَغَلَنَا نُورُ وَجْهَهِ عَنَ الْفِكْرِ فِي قَتْلِهِ, that we are distracted by the light of his face from the thought of killing him. Look at how Aba Abdullah, even in these moments where he's beaten and bloodied, heartbroken and physically broken, salamullahi alayh, they're still distracted by his nur and his jamal. Ya Aba Abdullah. In that situation, he still made sure he was in the top condition, top shape, such that even when enemies approach him, they just can't do it. They simply can't. And if you continue reading, he had that ring on him. He had that ring to the point where they tried to take it from him after he had been martyred. And he had all of this such that he can maintain and preserve his dignity. Salamullahi alayh. These, brothers and sisters, are all some of the elements that we are observing in modern Muslim debates. Now here's the question. Should we encourage such debates or no? Here's my methodology, and I think this is a good point to take in life, as it's inshallah something worth considering. Whatever the Ahlul Bayt did, you do. I don't necessarily see Ahlul Bayt looking for a fight or a debate. Hey, come here, let's talk. Hey, none of that. Whereas they were always the recipients of those who want to question them. Furthermore, Ahlul Bayt, they don't put people down when they see others having a different opinion. You know what they do? They'll put themselves on the pedestal and be an example for them. A young Imam Hassan and Hussein, they see an old man doing wudu wrong. We all know this story. They don't go up like, hey, what's wrong with you? You're old, you don't know how to do wudu? Waste of time. They said, hey, how about we do wudu and you see which one of us does it correctly. Look. Id'u ila sabili rabbika bil what? Hikmah. Be wise. Don't yell. Don't be belligerent. Don't be loquacious. Don't be an individual just mad and angry. لا كونوا دعاة لنا بغير ألسنتكم. Be a source of invitation to Islam, Ahlul Bayt, without using your tongue, brothers and sisters. And if you do decide to get into debates, here's the following you should always keep in mind. The following. Number one, always invoke logic. Logic. Wallah, I read in this hadith number 10 verses, etc. Don't bother yourself. Use logic. Logic you can't defeat, because if a person disagrees with logic, they're a jahil. What does the Quran call a jahil? وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا what? Say it again. Salama. Allah, Allah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That is a key maxim in life you should always remember. If a jahil individual, look at the Quran, look at the beautiful words of Allah, if they want to preach to you, look, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمْ khutbah, you see like khutbah al-Jum'ah, when a person starts speaking and preaching actually, the jahil when they want to preach to you, basically a debate, standing and yelling, etc. What do you say to them? Is it worth your time to debate them? Should you reference their sources and your sources and blah, 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 and you become a famous video on YouTube and you're such an embarrassment suddenly? La. قالوا salama. Just say salamu alaykum. That's it. Don't waste your time. Depending on who you're debating. These people sometimes they don't want to debate you. They just want to make a soundbite out of you. They want to straw man argument you. They're not interested in learning more. Because if you're interested in learning more, let's discuss without yelling. It is narrated by one of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, I believe the 6th Imam. He says, the first to raise their voice in a disagreement has already lost the debate, even if they were right. You're raising your voice and you're yelling. That means you're not having tawakkul on your arguments that you believe in, such that you have to invoke screaming and emotion. Nah, if your arguments are correct and you truly believe in them, you wouldn't force it. Just say what you have to say. And if this person rejects logic, then it's their fault. They're a jahil. Because that person is like saying, the sky is blue. And like, no, it's green. Look, no, it's still not blue. That you're a jahil. Salam, what can I say to you? What can I say to this person? I keep insisting, I reference a hadith. Literally, I just showed you and you rejected. Quran said that person, just say salamu alaikum. Not even get out of here, you kafir, you mushrik, you shi'i, or whatever. La, just say salamu alaikum. Unfortunately, even the term Shia is becoming derogatory. Shia of Ahlul Bayt, Shi'i, Ithnai Ashri, Rafidi, these are things we should be proud of. One day we have one of our ulama, one of the grandest ulama, Al-Allam al-Hilli, Radwanullah alayh, he would debate Ibn Taymiyyah, the inaugurator of the Salafi school of thought, the compiler of Minhaj al-Sunnah. And in his debates, it's recorded that Al-Allam al-Hilli, his title is the son of the pure, Ibn al-Mutahhir. And it's all known that Allama was always an upright man. Even though there were scholars that disagreed with him, they would still respect him. And if they would refer to him, they call him Ibn al-Mutahhir. Today, if you see a scholar from Ahlul Sunnah, an old man, let's say, someone who studied their life, what, are you going to insult them suddenly? La, you used to respect the guy just for his efforts, putting some time learning. You disagree theologically, okay, but don't disrespect the man. Number one, because he's older than you, he or she's older than you. Number two, yes, they have invested their life studying Islam, albeit maybe a different narrative of yours, but just respect the pursuing of knowledge. I've seen some young guys, if it's an extremist Islamic speaker, who cares about them? They're not even scholars. Even though if they memorize the Quran left, right, and center, they're like the Khawarij. They memorize the whole Quran, biggest beards ever, but they won't hesitate to fight the Imam of their time. Otherwise, there are people out there, they're scholarly, they come from the other school of thought. These young guys, I see them rushing, kafir, this, that. Well, slow down, man. This person probably has invested their life studying Islam, loves Ahlul Bayt, disagrees theologically. Don't attack them personally, because if you start invoking ad hominem attacks, you have nothing to share. Ad hominem attacks, you attack them personally, not their argument. You're a waste of time. You're a waste of time. If you have a disagreement, talk about that, not about the person directly. And you know what they do sometimes is they'll make fun of your family. You this and your woman that. That's not how Ahlul Bayt raised us to have a debate by the brothers and sisters. We notice that in the traditions, you might find an individual who can come across as very mean and abrasive. The Ahlul Bayt will constantly stress, just don't be like them. If they are juhal, and they are a person that denies the obvious, just say salamu alaikum to them. Then further on, you have to invoke logic, brothers and sisters. Be logical. Anyone who refuses logic is like they're refusing mathematics. That person don't debate. But if they start agreeing with you that, you know what, that does make sense, then it's worth the investment. One day an atheist came to Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, and he said to him, listen, I'm just tell you this. Whatever you give me, I will not believe in God. Whatever you say, Quran, I'm not going to believe in God. Convince me. Already the Imam's at a disadvantage. He just set the rules. Give me whatever, I won't believe in God. What does the Imam give him? He's not going to reference the Quran because he doesn't believe in the Quran. He's not a Christian so he can use the Bible. He does nothing. He's like, throw whatever, I won't believe. The Imam used logic. He says, observe the following and notice the brilliance of your Ahlul Bayt. He said, let's just forget all this God talk, etc. Let's just say, you died and I died. You can use this, by the way. It's a famous ontological argument. It has a name, and we'll discuss what that is later. He says, if it just so happens to be the case that you were right this entire time, because many of our youth say this, what if this is all wrong? What if we're doing all this, salah 5 times, etc., Saum, zakat? What if it just turns out to be fake? I died, black, lights out. That's it? I wasted my life? Imam Sadiq says, if it happens because you were right this entire time and I was wrong, you don't lose, I don't lose. There's no hell, there's no hell. We're both good. We're both fine. But if it turns out to be the case that I was right this entire time, then you lose and I don't lose. So where do you see the advantage more? In believing in God at least, just as a precaution, or refusing Allah? Because if you refused Allah and you were right, you're what? Nothing's happening to you. But if you refuse Allah and you were wrong, then you're going straight to hell. But if I refused Allah, believed in Allah, and I was wrong, He didn't exist, I'm fine, nothing's going to happen to me. But if I believed in Allah and I was right, then I'm at the advantage. So you're better off doing what? Believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That man literally right then and there said, وَإِنِّي أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَنَّكَ أَنْتَ يَا جَعْفَرَ ibn Muhammad حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ. This man embraced Islam. Logic got to him. He was willing to listen and entertain. By the way, this exact philosophical premise is called Pascal's wager. A man, a French philosopher and mathematician, came in the 17th century and proposed it. If you believe, you're at the advantage. If you disbelieve, then you are not at an advantage. If God was not real, then those who were a believer is fine, and those who are disbelievers. But if God is real, then only the believer is right and the disbeliever is wrong. So you're better off just believing in God. He had the term Pascal, because his name was Pascal, coined for this methodology. Imam al-Sadiq said it 1,400 years before this, and made it very clear. Logic, employ logic. Use it and invoke it. And among those who used their aql and invested in logic, brothers and sisters, are the scholars of Islam, and we don't give them enough credit. Al-Allam al-Hilli, going back to his case, he was called Ibn al-Mutahhar, we mentioned, the son of the pure. Ibn Taymiyyah would refer to him in the debates as Ibn al-Munajjis, the son of the impure, and he proudly says it in his Minhaj al-Sunnah, the way of life of the Sunnah. When I debated the son of the dispure, the impure, the najis, the one who is filthy and vile, he said this argument. Look at Allama when he refers to him. قال الشيخ Ibn Taymiyyah. Shaykh, elderly man who studied his material, that's it. Already when you start attacking a person personally, ad hominem style attacks, you've lost. You're not worth the time. Have akhlaq with those even you disagree. And you know what? Don't even speak. Use yourself as a representative of Islam. Your mannerism. A man by the name of Uday bin Hatim al-Ta'i, the companion of the Holy Prophet of Islam, his dad, Hatim al-Ta'i, was a famous Christian poet. He died before embracing Islam. Uday bin Hatim al-Ta'i wanted to become a Muslim. So he wanted to see Rasulullah. He went to Rasulullah. He saw him sitting down in the Masjid al-Nabawi al-Sharif. Immediately, you know what Rasulullah did? Stood up. Someone's visiting you, stand up. Especially if they're older, especially if they want to learn more. Stood up. This man's like, this guy is the most powerful man in the world. Stands up for someone like me. Stands up. That's already a check. His akhlaq is the best of akhlaq. Then when Rasulullah received him, he told him, sit first, then I'll sit. That's another check of the highest akhlaq. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. At the end of the day, you have the most sublime manners. He waited for me to sit, and then he sat. Then he noticed the pillow that he would recline on, Rasulullah had it. But Uday bin Hatim al-Ta'i didn't have one. You know what Rasulullah did? He's like, here Uday, take the pillow and you relax. I'll just lean against the hard wall. That moment, then and there, this man said, I came to discuss and learn more about Islam. Without using a single word, I have now believed in Islam. إِنِّي أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَنَّكَ أَنْتَ يَا مُحَمَّدْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. A man came to Islam through the akhlaq of Rasulullah. Of course, you don't need to be the scholar to the highest degree and the highest caliber to invite. You in the West today, use your manners, use your good akhlaq, represent yourself, look good, smell good, speak good. بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. And preach to them with that which is good. Call to them with something that is useful and good. Be respectful, resourceful. But you know what's even a more beautiful combination? It's when a person can become learned and involve these two. Study Islam and become a good example of Islam at the same exact time. And on a day like today, we honor the scholars of Al Muhammad. There is no bigger scholar today that we revere than the two scholars, Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib ibn Mudahir. These two, you know who they are? Sahaba of Rasulullah. They were companions of the Holy Prophet. So if they were companions of Rasulullah, you know what I would make them in Karbala? Elderly shuyukh. They were old men. And their story is a very interesting one. In Kufa, they would live and reside. Their wives heard. Muslim bin Awsaja ran to Imam Hussein before Habib ibn Mudahir. He beat him there. Habib was still studying the circumstance. I don't know what's happening. Let me just wait and figure out. You know who convinced him and changed him to join sides? Habib is a scholar of the Quran, by the way. He has the whole Quran memorized, all of it. He narrates from the sermon of Eid al-Ghadir to himself as well. Yani, I'm talking a man like you've never seen before. And he's a Sahabi of Rasulullah, lover of Ahlul Bayt, scholar of the Holy Quran. But he's unsure. What's happening? The hysteria is there. Paranoia is there. You know what changed him? His wife. His wife. She used that hikmah and maw'ilat al-hasana. Habib ibn Mudahir doesn't really need that. But he's unsure. What's going on here? You hear these news and words. Hussein is here, but he is this. This is going on. Habib knows who Imam Hussein is, but he really doesn't know what's going on. His wife says, so when are you going to go? He says to her, what do you mean? She says, are you really going to leave the son of Fatima al-Zahra by himself? He's outside of Kufa. When are you going to go? He said, you're right. Let me go now. He looked at his son Qasim. He's like, my boy, be good to your mom. I'm going to go. She stopped him right before he left the door. Habib ibn Mudahir, this alim of Al Muhammad. She said, just one thing before you go. Tell Hussein we love him. We can't accompany you. Tell Hussein we love you, Ya Aba Abdullah. And wallah, tonight we say with our hearts broken, we love you, Ya Hussein. Like the family and wife of Habib said to you, we love you, Ya Aba Abdullah. He said, inshallah, I'll send that love to him. Aba Abdullah, on his way to Karbala, he began to write a letter to Habib anyways. And you know the context of the letter, how it went? From one Habib to the next Habib. Come and join your Habib. Wassalamu alaikum. On his way, Habib ibn Mudahir, outside of Kufa, the delivery guy got to him. A letter from you. From who? From one Habib to the next Habib. He immediately knew this was Hussein. The writing is Hussein's writing, and the smell is Hussein's smell. He went, and Aba Abdullah saw from the distance a man walking. And he's looking, and Sayyidah Zainab is standing next to him. He's looking, and he is told, Sayyidi Mawlai, there's a man in the distance. You know what he says immediately? He says, Kun Habib. How I wish it's Habib right now. Why? Because Imam Hussein grew up with him. Habib ibn Mudahir was his grandfather's friend, Sahabi of Rasulullah. And there weren't many alive, by the way, anymore. This is one man in his 90s. But some of these men who are in their 90s, let them teach you a lesson of strength, physically and spiritually and mentally, subhanAllah. He says, I wish it's Habib. Sooner and sooner he came. Imam Hussein saw it was Habib. He couldn't wait for him. He ran and made his way to him. And Habib and Aba Abdullah embraced. Habib ibn Mudahir said to him, my master, forgive me for being late. I just didn't know what was going on. Imam Hussein said, Ya Habib, don't worry. I have one request for you. What is it? Sayyidah Zainab wants to send her salams to you personally. Allah, what an honor. Zainab al-Aqila al-Hawra wants to send her salams to you personally. Will you come to the tent and meet her and give your salams to her? He says, Zainab, who am I? What an honor. He goes to that tent, and that night Habib and Muslim heard Sayyidah Zainab say, that, are you sure these men are loyal to you? It was these two who came out and preached suddenly and said, Wallah, if we were to be cut 1,000 times and our bodies burnt, and if that was to happen to us 1,000 times and we were revived, we would never leave you, Ya Aba Abdullah. The day of Karbala came, brothers and sisters. You will see today Habib is buried alone by himself. He is not with the other shuhada. From how much Ahlul Bayt revered him, Imam Hussein gave him his own area. Muslim ibn Awsaja went and fought first. He fought, and Habib and Muslim were best friends. They grew up together. Both companions of Rasulullah, companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, of Hassan, now on the front lines with Aba Abdullah. Muslim ibn Awsaja goes. They say he was so old. His eyebrows were drooping from how wrinkly he was. Old, but he would hold it up with a bandana like that. And he fought. He fought valiantly. He fought and fought and fought until they surrounded him from all corners. He fell to the ground. He fell, they saw him crushed and heartbroken. Imam Hussein and Habib ran to him. Habib couldn't help it. It's his best friend. He ran to him, and then he got to him until Muslim ibn Awsaja was in his last few breath, and Imam Hussein rested his head on his chest. He would say to him, "Congratulations, Ya Muslim, for you will now attain martyrdom." Muslim bin Awsaja looks at Habib, and Habib looks back at his best friend he grew up with, and then Habib began to say, he says to him, "How I wish right now, if I didn't die in a few moments, if I knew I was going to die, or if I didn't know I was going to die in a few moments, I would have asked you, tell me what your will is. I would have fulfilled it for you." You know what Muslim bin Awsaja says? He's like, "No, I have a will for you." He points to Aba Abdullah with his hand barely able to lift it from how much they cut at him. He then began to say the following line, brothers and sisters. This line breaks the heart. He says, "أوصيك بهذا أوصيك بهذا الغريب غريب الغاضرية." I ask you, Ya Muslim, watch out for this one, this lonely individual. Watch out for Hussein, this is my will. Habib said, "Inshallah." At that moment it was his turn to fight. He went to the field and he began to call, "I am Habib, the son of Mudahir al-Asadi, and you who dare stands in front of my master and his women, I will refuse that, and I will fight you until my last breath, until the last drop of my body and blood fills the floor." Habib ibn Mudahir goes and fights, and he begins to remove the enemies of Allah one by one. They're all killed. He's a strong man. They underestimated him. The servant of Rasulullah runs at them by himself. Then they run at him by the hundreds, brothers and sisters, until they surrounded him, and he was dead center in that group. And they began coming closer and closer with their swords until they slashed at him multiple times. And this man, as strong as a mountain, began fighting until he fell to the ground. When he fell, he called out, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, Habibi ya Hussein." One Habib calls for his other Habib. Aba Abdullah runs to him. He removes them from him. He begins to weep because he knows this will be the last of the Sahaba of Rasulullah. Imam Hussein took him to his own place, buried him. If you were to go to Karbala today, inshallah, you will see Hussein and the companions are on one side, but Habib is by himself. They gave him that honor, brothers and sisters. But I ask you, who came and buried Hussein? Left on the ground for 3 days, no one to bury him. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Brothers and sisters, let us recite the ayat 5 times today. Many have requested that we recite أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ. There are many who are ill. You have seen today from the screen the list of brothers and sisters who are not doing well. There is a sister from New Jersey who has requested that we recite these for her, for she will be doing brain surgery. And we have members of our community who aren't feeling well. May Allah bless and heal all those who are sick on behalf of the one ill in Karbala. Let's recite the ayat 5 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mudtarra idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibul ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم اكشف السوء والبلاء عنا يا الله. اللهم المرضى المنظورين شافي وعافهم يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اقضي حوائجنا. اللهم شافي مرضانا. اللهم ارزقنا زيارة الحسين في الدنيا. اللهم وشفاعته في الآخرة وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء سيما من أوصانا بالدعاء. And for all those who have requested, let us recite for them a very loud salawat. مأتم الحسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
تمہارا دوست ہے تنہا تمہارا دوست ہے تنہا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ. شہید کیسے ہوئے وہ بتاؤ گے آ کر تم حال مسلم بے کس سناؤ گے آ کر رقیہ دیکھتی ہے رستا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ کلمہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ. لگاؤ اس سے بھی انداز میری غربت کے جہاں پہ ابن علی لکھنا تھا وہاں میں نے دیا ہے ماں کا حوالہ حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ. بتا رہا تھا اسے کوئی بھی نہیں ہے میرا تو بولی ثانی ذرا حبیب آئے گا ہے اس کو تم پہ بھروسہ حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ. وہ جب یہ سنتی ہے کوفے سے آ رہے ہیں شکی تو پوچھتی ہے ہمارا بھی آئے گا کوئی دعائیں دے گی سکینہ حبیب آ شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، در بطول دوبارہ جلایا جائے گا، تمہارے دوست پہ خنجر چلایا جائے گا، نہیں یہ وقت زیادہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط نہیں اس بہنوں کی آرزو سمجھو، پکار شام غریباں میں ثانی زارا کو، ہمارا لٹ ہے پردہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین 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 یا حسین ہاں حیا علی خیر العمل حیا علی عمل حیا علی سب پڑھو حیا علی خیر العمل حیا علی خیر العمل حیا علی خیر العمل حیا علی خیر عمل حیا علی خیر العمل یا حسین 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 میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، ہے میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا ہے، تمہیں بلاتا ہے زہرا کا لاڈلا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، ہے تمہیں بلاتا ہے زہرا کا لاڈلا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا ماشاءاللہ، میرے حبیب میرے دوست ہے، تمہارے آنے سے صحرا میں مجھ کو چین ملے، ملے حسین سے تو اور تجھے حسین ملے، نادر ابن مظاہر تو اب لگا جا، میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا، ہے میرے ماشاءاللہ جی ماتمی ماشاءاللہ کربلا جا، میرے حبیب کربلا جا میرے حبیب ہے مدینہ چھوڑ گیا کربلا میں آیا ہوں میں ایک عظیم سا مقصد بھی دل میں لایا ہوں مجھے مولا بنانی ہے یہ جگہ جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا ہے میرے حبیب جیے کربلا جا میرے حبیب ہے امید آنے کی تیرے لگائے بیٹھا ہوں میں تیری راہوں میں آنکھیں بچھائے بیٹھا ہوں سہارا دینے مجھے میرے باوفا جا میرے حبیب میرے حسین 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 جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا ہے اطاعتوں میں وفاؤں میں لاجواب ہے تو علی کے بیٹے کا بے مثل انتخاب ہے تو نہ انتظار زیادہ مجھے کرا جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا میرے حبیب میرے دوست کربلا جا میرے حبیب کربلا جا ہے میرے حبیب شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم ہائے شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشانی بسم اللہ شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشانی ہے ماتم کرو شبیر کا ہے زینب دلگیر کا ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم ماشاءاللہ کیا بات ہے ماشاءاللہ جی شبیر تیرا مومن کی نشانی ہاں یہ داغ نہیں لوگوں ہے معجزہ ماتم کا یہ داغ نہیں لوگوں ہے معجزہ ماتم کا سینے پہ لکھی میرے ہائے سینے پہ لکھی میرے کربل کی کہانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم مومن کی نشان ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم ہے شبیر ماشاءاللہ سب پڑھو مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر مومن کی نشانی ہے غازی کا علم لے کے بازار میں آئے ہیں غازی کا علم لے کے بازار میں آئے گئے روداد اسیروں کی، ہائے روداد اسیروں کی، دنیا کو سنانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن کی نشانی ہے جیے ماتم، ہائے ہائے مومن نشانی ہے شبیر، مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر، ہاں زینب نے شروع کی تھی زندہ میں عزاداری، زینب نے شروع کی تھی زندہ میں عزاداری، صدیوں سے چلی آئی، ہائے صدیوں سے چلی آئی، یہ ریت پرانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن کی نشانی ہے کی نشانی ہے شبیر، ماشاءاللہ مومن ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، ہاں آتی ہے صدا اب بھی کربل کی فضاؤں سے، آتی ہے صدا اب بھی کربل کی فضاؤں سے، شبیر حقیقت میں، ہائے شبیر حقیقت میں اسلام کا بانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن ہے شبیر، مومن، ماشاءاللہ سب پڑھو نام مولا جیے، ہے مومن کی ہاں دے پرسا بہتر کے زہرا کا لٹے گر کا، دے پرسا بہتر کے زہرا کا لٹے گر کا، ہر سال محرم میں، ہائے ہر سال محرم میں یہ یاد دلانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر تیرا ماتم، مومن کی نشانی ہے شبیر، مومن کی نشانی ہے، ماتم کرو شبیر کا ہے زینب دلگیر کا شبیر، ہے شبیر، سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ، سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ خود کربلا میں گھر دیا تو نے حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین، ہاں سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ، سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ خود کربلا میں گھر دیا تو نے حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، ہاں خالق تیرا ممنون ہے، خالق تیرا ممنون ہے مرتضیٰ اور فاطمہ کے نور یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، پڑھو حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين شهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد الباكر، السلام عليك يا جعفر الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى الكاظم، السلام عليك يا علي الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد التكي الجواد، السلام عليك يا علي النكي الحادي، السلام عليك يا حسن العسكري، السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا